consultant to please come on stage and introduce himself and his fellow panelists. Mr. Sumit Batheja.
Represent. I would now like to delve into the topic of social gaming. Gaming is as social as we can imagine, possibly more than what typical social platforms today offer and where they drive user engagement from. I would like to call upon my fellow panelists onto the stage and we will get started from there. It is a vast economy in itself. That's one. And a vast ecosystem. If you look at the social ecosystem in India, I'm bringing a very broad perspective over here, and then I'll open for the panelists. It is 800 million or so social monthly active users. And if you look at the overall gaming audience size in India, that's roughly about 507 million, whichever plus and minuses you may give and take, right? And 100 million plus streaming audiences, 100 million core gaming audiences, right, who possibly immerse or engaging with immersive games or multiplayer game. And that's where I think it is important to understand what makes a game go viral and social in its nature from the pretext of it, right? Or the context of it going viral is something that we would like to unfold and start by saying that, hey, what role does a platform play in it for a multiplayer game to go viral and social and for their overall business success? What is the kind of sustainability that we can see? We've seen games like League of Legends run for a decade, right? We've seen Dota having its own success, but it's a different business model altogether, right? It's a very different model, right? So that's a global perspective. And what is it in India that we can do for social games to emerge or the overall economy to emerge? Let me start with Badri. And in fact, we can start with an introduction of where you are, what you represent, and what do you think about social gaming as a context?
Yeah, thank you, Sumit. I'm struggling to hear you amidst the noise. It's an indication of my age, wherein I'm half deaf. So, but having said that, I represent Glance, which is a lock screen platform. We recently put a press release out each other on Facebook with your Zynga's Farmville. We were borrowing lives from others so that you can compete in Candy Crush. That was the first sort of root of social, and from there we have come to this situation wherein you cannot build a game, you cannot offer an experience to a user without having a social angle within the game. It's as ubiquitous as a game itself. You build a game, you have a great core play, you have good meta within the game. It will be orphaned unless you actually add a social angle to it. So you have to absolutely have a social angle. We have seen that on our platform itself, Sumit. We run multiple games which are single player in nature, which don't attract as much attention as it should. Local multiplayer games, player versus player games, massively multiplayer games are the ones that actually tend to do exceptionally well, much better than some of the standalone single player games. So yes, we see that journey sort of evolving. Every game developer now has a social angle to their game. So yes, it's as ubiquitous as making a good game itself, having a social angle. I hope you could hear me because it's very loud.
Aman.
Sure. So,
why don't you bring in your perspective,
Aman,
please?
Thank you, Sumit. I believe that so we work with almost over 500 brands and with almost 120 live streamers, and we've seen that even in live streaming, people tend to make social interactions in the live chat, right? When the game is playing, the live commentary is also a social way of people trying to communicate in a game. I think the first and foremost thing for expanding this domain is to penetrate through casual and hyper casual games. which games like Ludo is doing very well. Like there are at 120 million active users, so I think that is a very good start for India on making social games happen. That's about it. I mean, what else?
Sagar, I would want to bring you in over here.
Sure. Thanks, Sumit, for the introduction. First off, I'm the co-founder and CEO of Qlan. They're a social networking platform for gamers and esports enthusiasts. So my take on it is very different, wherein, of course, there's a social world that gaming audiences build within a game. But now they've evolved and trickled over to a point where there's a need to build an entire parallel social ecosystem just to support the growth and the number of people that exist in that universe. Because what we essentially do is we bridge the gap, which allows a lot of early onset gamers to solve a lot of their grassroots level issues, be it connecting with different gamers from the game they play, potentially building teams, discovering tournaments happening around that game. So having a social ecosystem to support any sort of game, be it esport, be it casual games, be it hyper casual games as well. He rightly pointed out, where every game has a social element to it, and somewhere it's more and more becoming an undetachable part of a particular game. And we're seeing that on platforms such as an MPL or a Dream 11 also, were traditionally solo casual games, now branching into multiplayer casual games. So it's undeniable that gaming is enabling the cultivation and the birth of a parallel social ecosystem which consists only of gamers. And I strongly feel we're at just the stepping stones of it, where we've not even scratched the surface. And this will potentially become a monster, which I think all of our cumulative imaginations will be undone by that.
Abeer, we were just having a chat. You are a developer of social games which have a civic cost to it. Why don't you give your perspective into what social gaming, according to you, is, and what is the contribution that your company is giving to the entire social gaming ecosystem, please?
So I'm Abeer, and I develop games for social change, like a serious game. But what we are a rural first game outfit where we use games for social change. So for you guys, we're building an appetite of gaming in perhaps the most rural parts of the country. So when you guys go in with your digital games, there is a gaming culture that we are building and going back to board games, to community games, to social games, to simulations, where the access to technology is still very limited. So so it might grow in the next 5 years, but also we are seeing that digital penetration is decreasing for the first time in 2 years. You're seeing a slowdown in smartphone sales, and you're seeing this urgent need on the part of people to be able to play a story, play their own story, play their own social context, play where they live. Because a lot of these visual worlds that are created, India is a recipient of narratives and visual design from the West. I received the German Chancellor Fellowship, so I'm teaching and working and researching in Germany right now. And Germany also has a similar problem. There is no single AAA game that has come out of Germany as yet. And why? Because the narrative, and you raised some very interesting points in the first question. What does virality mean? Where do we build social gaming? How do we do it? So in my experience, which is largely and vastly different from yours and yours, because we really go into the countryside, we see an urgent need for people. Yes, simple game mechanics build up an appetite, but if we continue to look at the user as someone who we're talking down to through these simple mechanics, they're going to get bored and start looking for more complicated things. And those things are emerging from the West. And that ability of the West to tell their own stories. Why does a Tom Clancy or a Witcher grow? Because they build their own mythos. Witcher is rooted in Nordic mythology. It builds a universe. It builds a lot of things. So that social aspect is not people coming around and playing a game together or talking about it. It is that they buy and see themselves into a larger story. So one of the things that we've realized So we built this town called Antarjal Nagar, Internet Town. We created 5 stories and we started using games and storytelling to build social change. Over a period of time, over 3 months, 4 months, we started seeing a dramatic change in the way that users are approaching digital rights. So they're able to understand these stories as their own lived experiences. They're able to play it not in a way that they have to do repetitive mechanical tasks, but engage in a story that is building out their own life. So virality for me is, so I'm not saying that we went viral, far from it. But what I'm saying is that we're getting snippets of what that future of gaming can look like in terms of social, where there is a hunger to tell or play their own stories. There is a hunger for people to engage and not be playing mechanical things, but be immersed in a world where people look like us.
Yeah. Sorry, if I can add to that, Sumit, completely agree with what you say, Abeer. At no point should just the social aspect of the game be the pillar around which the game is. It is the core loop, it is the meta, it is the surrounding aspect of the game which forms that pillar for the immersive experience that the game offers. So you're absolutely right when you say that. Yes.
If I may just say that, you know, India right now, and I'm speaking for Germany as well, is that we're looking at games as a single intervention. That we will play Candy Crush, we will play Raji, we will play these games. It's not as simple as that. What the world has taught us is that games, it's like pasta, right? It's exactly like pasta. Yeah, but not only that. If I steam and boil like spaghetti, I can cook it in tomato sauce, white sauce, purple sauce, orange sauce, whatever. A game is just an articulation of a story. It's But before that is the story that is pasta. You play it as a game, you play it as toys, you play it as whatever. And what I also personally feel, and this is what our next step in terms of social gaming is, that we're going to start looking at our own story. So not Ramayana or Mahabharata. So there's a joke that I crack. The first sort of AAA game that will come out of India will not be AAA. The AA will stand for Anil, Anil, Anil. So I am invested in keeping the social, cultural importance of Anil Kapoor alive, for example, or Dawn or whatever. So what we're working towards is trying to identify these scripts, these stories, turning them into games, and then hitting the imagination. We all dream very different things. So the moment we start providing a platform for repetitive mechanic oriented games, what we're doing is we're telling people this is what you can dream. So, and what happened in food tech, what happened elsewhere, we're going to start seeing that burning happening because everything is going to start looking the same. So your social will move away from that.
I want to bring in a very critical component of what drives game social, which is the creator economy, which is three of the gentlemen by the sequence are directly and indirectly related with. So why don't we start, and the significance of a creator economy from a perspective of not just social gaming, but also from the perspective of a platform. What value and how much of a significance it is, right? Considering you are directly deriving benefit as a platform, that more and more quality content you are acquiring, and thus the user engagement. That's one. And also you are indirectly supporting the overall job creation economy that is outside, right? Which is the entire gaming industry, right? So Badri, why don't you bring in a perspective from Glance? Okay, I'll be more louder now. I'm picking up a very critical component of creator economy, and from the value perspective of a platform, how much important it is to drive a game go viral, right? From a creator's perspective. I would stay away from influencers, but rather I would go from a grassroots creators to the mass influencers as well. Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, thank you. It's very hard to hear. Yes, you're right. The creative economy, how we are supporting, yes. See, I can tell a couple of experiences of examples of how it transpired on Glance. We initially put a few games which were just a very simple mechanics, nothing too glamorous about it. These games would exist by itself, and users would come and play, and we would, with our tremendous scale, at the risk of sounding very salesy, with our tremendous scale, we would get at any given point about 500,000 users playing that game every day. Now, over a period of time, that started declining. What Glance did was it was an endless game in nature, so we put a leaderboard. The moment we put a leaderboard, people started competing amongst others. The moment people started competing against others, it sort of ballooned up, and it got revived, so that you had more and more people actually playing those games. So that is one small aspect that we did in Glance, wherein we enabled a leaderboard. We also offer ability for users to share games outside of the platform as well. So we have a WhatsApp symbol wherein you can go ahead and share these games by enabling them to make it viral. All this in turn actually helps the developer, because more and more people are actually playing his game. That is how we are looking at sort of getting more awareness about the game amongst our users. I'm sorry if that answered, because I'm having a really
No. Just one out of curiosity. Are there any creator-led programs that Glance? Are there any creator programs that Glance runs internally for the creators to come and maybe live stream their gameplays and stuff?
Yes, absolutely, Sumit. You're absolutely right. So there is a massive creator focus. We have, I think about 50, 60 odd creators on our platform who also stream games as well. So the one tenet of Glance is the actual classic, simple HTML5 games. The other is is a streaming platform. There is a massive creator economy there. Users come, on any given day we get about 2 million users watching this content that gets put out. So yes, there is a massive creator economy which Glance is sort of funneling to bring awareness about esports and streaming in the ecosystem.
Got it. Aman, if I can bring your perspective, you work with influencers, right? And essentially you are connected directly with the creator economy. What sort of a value do you see creators can provide a game to go as viral as we see? And from an Indian perspective, let's take some examples if you've seen certain examples.
So we've seen micro influencers work very well. So macro is very easy, where you pick out gamers who are at 10 million, 1 million, whatever. But we created a network of 25,000 micro live streamers for YouTube when we were consulting to YouTube, and the network that the passion that someone when they're starting out is very huge, right? So the network that they lead out and how they push game to the non-overlapping audience is very huge. So I believe that focusing on micro level is very crucial for any game, right? Rather than spending money on the bigger plays on day one. That's worked out very well for our clients.
Sagar, from your perspective, how do you see creators playing an important role for a platform like Qlan, right? And I know you just come out of beta.
Yeah.
So what's the importance of creator economy from your social gamer network perspective?
Sure. I mean, Sumit, everyone here, we've all realized the might of the creators when it comes to gaming and esports in India itself. Aman will know this. Everyone here, in fact, knows it. It's a booming economy, right? The aspiration is set high up there with creators like a techno gamer from India sitting on, I think, roughly 30 million subscribers. That's not a joke to achieve in any market, but an Indian gamer having done that, the aspiration is set up there very high. So this involves a lot of other smaller subsets of gamers that largely come from non-metro cities as well. They've seen the peak of how big a gaming creator can become from within India. And the example that I quoted, Techno Gamer, he belongs to Jaipur. He doesn't come from a traditional big city. But what started happening is now everyone is giving it a go, where they're trying to put out content on Instagram, they're trying to put content on YouTube. But the sheer saturation and the cluttered atmosphere of these social networks does become a roadblock. Beyond that, the ability to break that clutter, find the right audience for the sort of content an individual creator makes, and then keeping them regularly engaged becomes very tedious. So what a platform like ours at Qlan does is we streamline this process by building a vertical community. So imagine a young creator starting from any corner of this country today will find it way easier to resonate, put out content, get that traction, get that initial push on a Qlan as opposed to an Instagram or a YouTube. Simply because we've built an environment and an ecosystem where everyone exists only for one reason, that is gaming and esports. So easing of that journey, breaking the clutter down for them, taking away the roadblocks that otherwise exist is something that we've effectively been doing. And I'm more than proud to share the fact that we've already onboarded around 50 creators that have started their journey on Qlan since day one, since we were at the beta stage. And now they've grown with the platform to have around 200, 300, not a massive number at this point, but we're a young platform. But these are the ones that have taken the onus of building something on their own on a completely new environment. And it's our agenda and our prerogative to make sure that they touch the peak of their capabilities while being on our platform.
Interesting perspective. Abeer, from your context, how do you see creator economy playing any role as such, and what would that be if it is?
So I'm going to completely blindside you again with my opinion about things. So the creator economy, again, I will not define as has been on this. I wrote an article in Scroll a while ago about how the Indian gaming ecosystem needs to do two things. One, support an alternative creator economy of people who are writing books, who are producing writing stories. The transition from books to games has to happen far more seriously. And that is one creator economy that you need to make people believe in the first case that they can build and write games. So I think that one thing is very, very difficult. And as people working in building a platform, social gaming, all of that, we also know that the talent pool is really small, right? So right now the crisis is twofold. One, the belief that the creatives such as script writers, book writers, illustrators, artists, all of these people beyond the tech are able to see that gaming and game writing is an option, because we're leading to a lot of like talent drain. Because say 80 Days, which is one of the biggest indie games coming out of London, the UK right now, is written by an Indian woman from Bangalore, right? So because we're not supporting the writing and creative industry in providing them a platform to write for Indian made games, they're going to go abroad. And that's where I am too. I got an opportunity to go work elsewhere. While I am building my company here, there are greater opportunities to experiment with storytelling there. Now, the second problem is that so I work at a university. I research at a university, the Cologne Game Lab, which is one of Europe's biggest game building spaces. The belief that you can have specific creative skills for games is not ready here. You do not have graphic designers, 3D artists who are looking at games as the natural outset of their skill set or whatever. So there are 2 points that I have. One is that the creative economy, when it comes to writing a game, what ChatGPT, what AI and optimization is showing us in the future, coding, you can buy most of your assets from the Unity store. The thing that will differentiate stories from one thing to from games, from one game to another, is not going to be the physics and the coding. That will definitely be there, but the future lies in supporting a creative economy that is willing to tell fearless and beautiful stories on your platforms. So as people who are invested in the creative ecosystem of influencers, it is very important for you to see where the turn is going. Maybe now we are at streaming and all of that. 5 years down the line, you guys are going to be looking at agents to buy you scripts, to buy you stories. So it's very important to go there. The second thing is to convince and go village to village, door to door, and tell them, look, games are an industry where you can pour yourself into. the biggest thing that happened, and in Germany, was that they set up a 50 million euro grant, and that's gone up to 73 million euros now. So a lot of people who weren't seeing the gaming industry as a viable option, seeing that 73 million euro grant, are like, shit, I'll get into it, right? So you're dealing with 50 creators right now, and वो मुश्किल से मिलते हैं यार, है ना? Because there isn't a ready population that is coming and knocking on your door, because we're not developing an ecosystem to support. And the ecosystem is two, creating the ability and the imagination to believe it is possible, and two is to provide skilling and technical institutions to spur that imagination. So those are.
I'll now touch upon two of the games which have seen a meteoric rise. PUBG and Free Fire in India, 100 million plus users. That's the example that I would quote when I look at, okay, what is the social phenomena? What is the pop culture that is driving the youth of the country around gaming ecosystem? Now, as a platform, there is a huge dependency, and certainly from an influencer perspective, there is a huge dependency when the game is such viral and social in nature, and if it goes offline, how is that the platform then, what are the new bets that you take, right? And what are the things that, opportunities and challenges that you see at the same time when macroeconomic factors like this or governmental factors like this impact your business?
Good question, Sumit. Without getting into very controversial subjects about game bans and so on, our creators did something very simple, and it was encouraged by the platform, of course. We started, our belief was that, any game is like a drug. If that gets banned or that's not available, creators are able to shift to other games. We completely promoted that and endorsed it, so much so that, famous creators who would stream one game, started doing things on other games. So as a platform, we were not game dependent. We built it around the creators itself. So whether if it is, let's say, Bantai Baba playing one particular FIFA game or Free Fire, whatever it might be, it wasn't built around the game. It was built around the creator and the charisma that they bring to the table. That was one thing that we actually did. The second thing which we did to spur growth was this new phenomenon of watch parties, which was something that no one had heard of. We started doing a lot of such watch parties wherein other games also rose into significant prominence, specifically after the adverse effects of June, July last year. So those are a couple of things that we actually did intentionally to sort of promote other MOBA games, other FPS games within Glance at least. Yeah.
Aman, your perspective.
Yeah. In our case, I won't deny the drop in numbers after these games went offline, since a lot of people were consuming these games every day and watching it. But end of the day, the audiences wanted entertainment, which they do through playing the game or watching the game. And in our space, where when the creators who were streaming these games and their viewership dropped to around 20 to 30%, they pivoted to making their brand more audience friendly in terms of making more content that is accessible, such as vlogs, such as podcasting. Right now, which was a lesson for all of these creators, and now they're building their personalities. Some are into fitness and exploring other entertaining sections. So I mean, there's always space for entertainment.
Right. Unique perspective. Now, Qlan, right? When certain factors impact any game, right? How do you see your community engagement on your platform, which is essentially built on gamers for gamers, and it is the gaming community, right? Do you see that impacting the interaction engagement dropping down, because a lot of hype is around when is that game coming back, but what next if such big games are offline then?
Sure. I mean, good question, Sumit. The thing is, if you even talk about, let's keep gaming apart. Even if you talk about India as a traditional sporting country, we play 100 odd games at the international level, including track and field, team sports, all of it. But India has only one cricket, and there will always be only one cricket. The same logic applies to the world of esports, where there are a ton of games which people are not probably talking about, people from outside the ecosystem. For them, the cricket of esport could be a BGMI or Free Fire or the games that we've been talking about. But we need to understand the audience and the gamer psyche, because for them, although some games matter a lot, it's gaming at the end of the day that matters more than a particular game. So me as a gamer, what we've noticed on our platform is, of course, there is a dip in some form of interaction because it's a preferred game, it's a favorite game, it's something that I always go back to. But given enough time, the gamer inside any individual will not stop gaming. They will move on to another game. We saw that happen. There was a gap in the market which Free Fire took over really well when the initial PUBG ban happened. We're looking at Indian developers developing some phenomenal titles, potentially AAA titles we could give to the world. And it's a young industry. We're barely a 2-3-year-old industry when it comes to esports in India. We're not even, again, scratching the surface in terms of the full potential. So all these gaps that we see today and we talk about today will not exist in the future, where I am very bullish on the fact that some Indian developers will fill up that space and there will be global counterparts. We're looking at large format PC and console title like a Valorant from PC coming on to mobile only. And there are other few titles that we know about are moving from traditionally being PC or console to mobile. And that is purely to reach out to a larger audience. That is to increase tenfold of what their total player capacity could be. And they've realized that becoming more approachable, given data and the accessibility of mobile phones, it's phenomenal how large a game, even a large enough game today globally, can become by opening themselves up to new markets like the Indian subcontinental region, the Southeast Asian region, and in fact the MENA region as well now. So a gamer, to sum it up, a gamer will not stop gaming. They will always find a solution. From the business side of things, whoever builds a product that's good enough to take that space, it's up for the taking. And again, we're just starting off and we have miles to go now.
Right. Yeah, but I'll bring one close to you. Now, that's one aspect from a gamer side. From a broader concept, if you look at, I've heard many views. Now, regarding the ethical consideration, if there are any, right? Social gaming, it is, obviously some people say it is addictive. Of course, it becomes to a point where it does, right? Then there are issues around child safety, data privacy, right? What do you think are the things that, as a platform owners, are the steps that are in a right way forward for ensuring that there is a certain level of, and we've seen countries like China and some others taking steps around, and essentially those FPS games and mobile games, right? That involve some sort of a shooting and blood violence, right? Then, as a platform owner, what are the boundaries that you set? What are the parameters that you say, okay, fine, this is where we're going to go to the next evolution. Now the economy is so broad and the overall market size is so huge. How do we address these issues? Possibly, Badri, we can start if you have a context around it.
Sorry,
All
Sumit,
right. You want to
please.
go first, please? Yeah.
So it's really interesting that you asked this question, because there's an organization in Germany called the Bundeszentrale für politische Bildung. I'll say it in English, but like the Center for Civic Education. Since the 1990s, they've been doing this one event. It's called LAN parties. And the LAN parties are, so you book a LAN party in your school and they bring a game like Counter-Strike or whatever, and they bring the parents to come and play. Now, when the parents start playing, they start first teaching them how to play the game, and then they start simulating what it looks like, so they'll pull the plug at some point when they're at an important point. So the parents will get up and say, you know, what did we just do?
Reactions.
Yeah. what does it mean to engage in violence, what does it mean. So through that, they were able to build this intergenerational conversation about gamers, about what is the importance of playing. So these were called LAN parties. And they have 54 in a year or 50 odd in a year. They get sold out. Because it becomes a way that they're able to talk about gaming between the generation. So the way I see the future is that the problem is that we skipped 2 generations. We didn't get on PC, and consoles are really small. 95% of our gaming is this. But this has a different set of problems when it comes to the eyes. This is deeply personal. There is no community aspect to it if you look at it. Like, you sit at home, you sit in a corner, you don't know what you're doing. So when we start looking at bringing in child safety, digital rights, all of that, I think the first step is, of course, something that we can learn from LAN parties, which is roping in intergenerational conversation. But the second is also drawing that line with kids who can use this for a variety of reasons. And I'm not saying that games are violent and the violence of games is transmitted from the game to the individual. But in the sense that, and this is a question that we've been dealing with in our research as well, is that the broader amount of games that we play, like Counter-Strike or World War games or violence or PUBG, it's white bodies that are attacking people that look like us. So what does that mean when we think about what is happening to children? Because when we build our games and we take them into parts of India where we're talking about, subsidies or, SOPs or whatever, public, and these are tools of propaganda and ideology. So they communicate a certain message. Imagine I'm sitting in Muzaffarnagar, surrounded by like farmland, and we're playing our game on the elections, and these kids are arguing against subsidies. Bhai, agar tumhari subsidies, tumhare farmland ki subsidies nikal jaye, so what will happen? So in the same way, when we think about digital rights, we think about data safety, there's also the larger question of what are we communicating? So are we like, what? So this is also a question in Germany, because a lot of the games that come out from the US are World War II first-person shooters, in which they are the enemies 90% of the time. Delta Force Land Warrior, all of that, we, people who look like us, are the enemies. So that is also a question that, so yes, addiction, child safety, all of that, these are mechanics that you guys would know about. But the larger sociological messaging is very important to even think about building brown games. And the other question that is there, and I was reading this article, in all of your games, you have loot boxes, right? Do you know the history of the word loot? Huh?
Yeah, the British, when they looted.
It's a word that was used by the British to plunder India. So all of these, it is a movement of the thoughts, all of that coming from there. So adding that to this question about child safety, what does the future of gaming for an Indian audience, according to you guys, look like?
Yeah, I completely agree with what Abeer has said. On one aspect, on the privacy part, which you spoke about, more and more Western nations are now realizing and have brought about GDPR compliance. You have COPA regulations and so on. So Glance also wanted, I can tell from Glance's perspective, that we wanted to expand into Latin America. So one major thing which came about in Latin America was age gating. We need to ensure that the user, no matter how simple or how non-violent a game it is, he needs to cross the threshold of 21 years to actually even be able to click and play the game. So there are multiple such regulations across the globe. It's having a slow trickling down effect to India. Recently, the government has realized that there were a lot of surrogate advertising around sports betting apps, where people were actually killing themselves after losing fortune of money. Now, the government has gone ahead and decided to ban all of them, which is a step in the right direction. Now, GDPR is also trickling down to Asia very soon. So those privacy things are something that needs to come, I guess, from a government level, and platforms will obviously start to comply then. Yeah.
I think platforms are quite working on this. I think YouTube has been very proactively working on this since they had to pay a fine of $600 million 2 years back on the kids part. Talking about social responsibility, I mean, we tried to communicate these through our network of creators, where we do this IP called Clean Stream. We try to communicate how do you game responsibly. Uh, in the in the clean stream, you don't have to say any cuss words, right? And and we communicate to the audiences that I am a streamer. This is my profession. You can play games and earn money by being a streamer or becoming a content creator, and communicating all the right things on how to play responsibly, being it taking appropriate breaks between gaming and everything else. And this all comes under a concept called clean stream. This is our sort of way of communicating a socially more responsible way to game.
Sagar, from Qlan perspective, are there any unique views that you can bring
Sure.
on the table?
I think most of it was covered, but one thing that we're very, very conscious about, especially on Clan, is the this the the easy looking part of toxicity and being a little bullish. That comes very naturally. If I had a bad game, someone coming, a little amount of trash talk, a little joking around it. But what we need to be conscious about is the fact that these guys are teenagers, most of them. And although in a playful nature, probably it doesn't seem damaging, it is something that may end up causing some issues to some individual. At Clan, we're effectively developing a piece of tech where the platform is learning all these forms of bullying and the toxic words that are generally thrown around on a public space, like on a public platform like Clan. And we want to effectively eradicate it by not only not allowing the usage of those specific words in the sound or in the tone that it's meant to be, but also having a repercussion when people on the platform do that. Now we have our own virtual currency onto the platform, which allows them to do a ton of stuff within that ecosystem. We're exploring ideas where even if I attempt to do something like that, barrier one is the app won't let me do that. But barrier two, just because of that intent of me wanting to do that, there has to be some payback. And this in turn is something that we foresee and at least are trying to build a culture where people start realizing that not only doing this on a public platform, but even thinking in that light about a certain someone's just game performance is something that I shouldn't be indulging myself into. Again, these guys are young. It's a very, very nascent stage. It will come with time. But we're very, very conscious of the fact that we're dealing with a very, very impressionable audience, and we need to be conscious as platform owners to take that into consideration and at least put reforms around it. Learning or not learning and behavior is something that's uncontrollable at the end of the day. But we want to build an environment where everyone who walks in feels safe and wants to be a part of it over a long period of time.
That's highly critical for social gaming. Please, Abeer.
Yeah.
Again, there is another part of it, which is that as organizations that are working in this, another lesson from Germany that I've had is that EA Sports, Ubisoft, everyone came together and set up something called the Digital Spielkultur Stiftung, which is the digital game culture foundation. And what they do is they do three things. One is, as you rightly pointed out, bullying and how the system is looking at that. They create research. Then they do ground level activation. Then they sensitize. And then through that, they're able to communicate to the target. They build curriculums. They take them to schools. So I think even as people who are exposing this, it is important. And I see the future as you guys will need an educational component to it, where research and on the ground activation through people is going to start happening. So we're at that cusp. We are putting out research. We are going into that. So I see that future as well.
I think just one personal example that I can give you, right? My child plays Roblox quite often, right? And I know it is as social as it can be, but at the same time, it is intimidating, right? Because a child is playing and engaging with outside world. Of course, we used to play at our own time, but that's a whole different kind of immersive experiences that they are engaging into. And Fortnite, Roblox, all of those new social platforms, so to say, are are all the more raising concerns like you are all iterating. But those are different platforms at this stage. They will emerge into something else. Of course, they are evolving. So I, I think that's a very close to heart for all of us, and some areas that will definitely we need to pay attention to in case if the economy needs to grow. We all agree to that. Uh, can I just put one last thought onto the table, and then we can open the forum for Q&A? Is around future of social gaming, and where do you see from your each own platform perspective, where is it going, right? How do you see this user engagement is going to evolve? Are there any trends that you are observing which possibly have been a learning in the past for you, and now it continues to evolve at a pace that how the Indian gaming ecosystem is today?
Look, from our platform's perspective, we have a very large community on Discord that actually sits and watches all the that gaming community which lies outside of our platform. We want to bring into the platform. We have people who play games, watch games, and so on. Uh, all of them talking about their experience outside of the entire platform happening on Discord. Discord itself, I mean, it's a fantastic. You have multiple servers. You can talk about everything. Game developers love it. They love to use it for targeting their specific audience, sending goodies, and so on. The idea is to slowly imbibe that into the platform itself. That is one step that we intend to take. We have a highly regimented and regulated platform where anybody who's playing a game, everybody behind the screen is a keyboard warrior, right? I mean, it's inevitable. There is going to be filth, there is going to be smut that is flying around. It is imperative that it's a platform's duty to actually ensure that that is regulated and regimented. I believe that in India it is, but obviously a lot more needs to be done. Hopefully, Glance is doing all that right now and setting the path for future companies also to sort of regiment and regulate user content and filth that comes out very naturally nowadays. Yeah.
Aman, your perspective on future of social gaming, and of course, creators are very key component to that.
I mean, if you talk about communities, I think Reddit is quite underrated in India. The kind of communities that Reddit has built abroad or internationally is commendable, and how uh, uh, once in a while they go mainstream, like what happened with Wall Street bets with the GameStop IPO. But I think the community with on Reddit that can be done in India with gaming, social gaming can be huge. And my I'm betting on this this year, this community this year. Yeah.
Sagar, gaming community and gamers, where are they going?
The future, Sumit, I think we're walking the right together. They've started their own smaller organizations. They're running tournaments at the local level at their own capacity. So being a support ecosystem to the grassroots, and the way we see it from where we stand, uh, many careers are going to be built out of gaming, which are not limited to being a creator or just being a professional athlete. There's a whole support let's look at it like any other sport, right? There are 11 players who play football, but there's a whole coaching staff and a team around it. There are analysts around it. There are physios around it. The same ideology applies to esport, where we're looking at people who are good writers, but they exclusively want to write only about esports. People who are good designers, but they want to give their and extend their designing skills only to the world of gaming and esports. So it's this social atmosphere that is enabling the growth of all these careers. And of course, this will become a norm. But the origin of anything that has to do with gaming and esports is going to be social, because the moment you become an individual in this ecosystem, you're very ineffective. But the moment you bring in more people, be it other gamers, your own team, an opposing team, a whole tournament full of competitive teams, it just elevates it to the next level. So social and gaming, in other words, in essence, are the same. They go hand in hand. One cannot exist without the other. And the future, we'll just see how massive and how much more scalable this entire vertical is going to be.
Right. Abeer, your final thoughts on civic perspective to social games.
So, the, so I have many thoughts, as you guys have realized. So I will have many thoughts. The first one is that the speed of tech outweighs how we can either police them, build policies around them, or even understand how we research them. So I think the future of child safety, digital rights, data privacy, all of that, at least in the Indian context, will emerge in the next couple of years. The second thing about the industry that I would like to say is that what you guys are doing is very, very important, but the Indian industry for gaming needs to figure out uska jigar kya hai. It really needs to think about where it's going, whether it needs to copy mechanics, visual designs, and all of that from the West, or is there something intrinsically Indian that we can build? So that is the second thing. The third thing, I think the future of social gaming or gaming is to build the community and the community of developers, creators, storytellers, research, festivals, all of that. And you see how these societies are also being able to negotiate every single aspect of the gaming ecosystem. There's esports, which has its own right, its own footing. It has gaming social platforms, which has its own right, a creative economy, a storytelling economy, a developer economy, and they're all speaking to each other. And they're all trusting, learning, and they're all growing because they're invested in that growth. So I think events like this need to happen more often, where we're all who are invested in the gaming ecosystem, but approaching it from above, below, sideways, understand what we all can learn from each other. The third thing, and I know that this is slightly far more like unexpected, but I'd like to point to the Karachi music ecosystem as it emerged in the double O's and tens. It was a bunch of people who realized that they needed to put together beautiful music. And it didn't matter which band they played in as long as they were building music together. So I think the game ecosystem, the future doesn't lie in the way the West has built games, which is competitive, market share, all of that. If we're invested in taking India to a global stage, there has to be an inherent collaborative game building that we have to think about. And all of your platforms do that. You're all spaces. You are not an individual, you're not a game developer. You are a place that pulls a punch and provides a space for a collective voice of gaming. Right? But what does it look like for a larger ecosystem is what I'm curious about. So these are my thoughts.
Well, gaming is present in our future. We kind of align on our thoughts. Very, very interesting panel. Thank you for your discussion. I'll quickly open the forum for any Q&A if there are, and then we will do the closing thoughts. Yes.
What are your thoughts on the Indian gamer censorship? So where is the line in developing game?
Come closer to the mic, please.
Can you just
Close?
come closer?
Yeah.
Just come closer.
Come closer.
Just stay here, all right? What are your thoughts on Indian gaming censorship? Censorship, I mean. Yeah, like China have his own censorship. They're gonna censor the games and hide the bloods and some sexual scenes as well if you play Witchers. Or where the Indian have, what are your thoughts on Indian community as well?
What?
What are your thoughts on Indian community going to censorship for developing a game, for developers?
Censorship within games.
I'm unable to understand what you're saying.
One is censorship and the second one, show me your question.
Indian gaming community censorship.
Let me explain. अरे लिख दे मेरे लिए हाँ censorship हो गया हाँ ठीक है अच्छा thank you can I go first and the
Yes,
answer
you
is
go
really
ahead.
simple
I'm sorry, I didn't able.
हाँ so India is a magnificent nation. It has a variety of stories, a multitude of perspectives, and for it to prosper, there has to be a separation from what we can build and what we can't build. I think the government needs to facilitate growth rather than telling us what we can build and what we can't build. So censorship is exactly like that. It has to, it is a magnificent country, it is beautiful, it has all the policies that are required for growth, it is on the cusp of greatness, but agar koi, we as storytellers, builders, platform makers, they need to trust us to know that we will look out for our own nation. And that's what we're asking. We're saying censorship is wrong or right, we're not commenting on that. We're saying they should trust us to know what we want to do with the nation.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, it was a fascinating discussion. I'm completely new to gaming. I just saw that this was on and I came here. I have two points to say. One is a concern and the other is an aspiration. I mean, I'm a father of a 11th standard son. My concern is I don't want to see a wasted generation because of e-sports and e-gaming. I would like him to go outside, play real sport, maybe get involved in real social networks than actually doing it on a mobile, because you know it's a different world outside than a virtual world. So you also know that the national education policy is trying to universalize education, and gaming is a medium of education if properly triggered or plugged into the education system. You could have real superstars into the future. You know, the India could actually be a global leader provided we have our youth very well educated and addressing the challenges of tomorrow. So gaming is a medium where such education can be so interesting that as a kid goes to kind of gaming, he should also learn something which could actually develop his skills for being having a brighter future. That is one. The other, that's the concern part. The aspirational part is there is a lot of storytelling coming to your creative side, which is very Indian. You must have heard of this Kantara movie and many others, which are very rooted stories regionally and also nationally. So can't we have such stories? I mean, we have a lot of mythology. Amar Chitrakatha was what we grew up with. These stories mainstream through gaming and kind of trying to find, which also roots the youth to their own culture and their own ethos through these mediums. So these were the two things, aspirational and concern part. Can this be well connected in some way, and can the Indian gaming ecosystem work towards that?
I think I understood your question broadly. It's terribly difficult to hear you. So you spoke about the concerns about having a child, of course, how they're exposed to a lot of venom out in the market. There is, I mean, you associate social with a lot of filth, anyways. So yes, there are. It's a very valid concern, no doubt about it. I think in several cases, the platforms actually go ahead and do a lot to ensure that that is regulated. That's our belief. That's my belief as well. Uh, I'm not sure how we can approach it from an education perspective. I didn't quite understand that part. Uh,
So something to do with skills development. Developing skills through gaming is is one plug point where you can work towards.
huh.
Can there be certain skills maybe drones, maybe certain technologies which they can do through Lego. I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, I'm just thinking aloud, but I'm sure there are certain skills which can be developed, even soft skills for that matter, through gaming, which which can be developed through gaming, which can benefit the player himself going into the future.
So I think there is a fabulous, fabulous ecosystem of that exists. But the problem right now is that this ecosystem that's coming out of India doesn't have the same capital or financial heft that comes out of the West or even Byju's, right? We have beautiful games. We are also, like I run Civic Games Lab, we teach democracy, health, nutrition, digital rights, all of that. But we're always plagued to be at a lower scale because we're not seen as commercial. Now, why aren't we seen as commercial? Is one, that you will not pick us. That is the first thing. If I was to give you a foreign product and I was to give you my product, you're going to pick the foreign one and I'm going to lose out. So I was featured by an international publication as 6 creators of the social gaming to look out for. One thing that we had all in common was that we are subject to consumer racism. जो white चमड़ा बनाता है वो ही बिकता है. तो हमें we have to also check. So if I was to give you my game, you're like, okay, it's Indian, it's 2,500 rupees. You're like, but why is it so expensive? But if I was to give you a foreign game, you have that consumer appetite to pay for it. So that's one. And these soft skills are happening throughout. You have beautiful, from early childhood to 16 to 30, you have a series of activities, games, simulations, policy, soft skills, hard skills, all of it is happening. But we won't buy into it because an Indian made product at 33,000, 2,500 will always seem too expensive. The second thing is that in terms of stories, that goes ahead. If I was to get you to buy Harry Potter, and if I was to get you buy an Indian sort of fantastical story, you're going to pick Harry Potter because they have the marketing heft, the international heft to sell it. We as a country, and this is the future of the gaming ecosystem, we are caught in a global screaming match where the West has the biggest, they are on an arena stage at a rock concert and we have a loud mic. And maybe on many days we don't even have that loud mic. So they're playing on like a 10,000 watt stage and we're screaming horse. So for us to grow, Google Indian game developers working in the soft skill space, support Indian made products, local businesses, and you will see our economy flourish.
Sumit, passionate one.
Excuse me, Sumit, with your permission.
Please.
So there are quite a few of these organizations, not just in terms of hard skills, like how do you repair an air conditioner? How do you work as a plumber? So especially these areas, there's a lot of work which is happening. Gamification, as we all know, is I think the next big thing. You'll be surprised that close to about 20 years back, ILNFS actually invested in a company which led education, you know, the multimedia way. It was too early for the country to possibly understand, but I can tell you with a fair bit of surety that what now Byju's is doing, you know, they wanted to 20 years back, possibly a little ahead of its time. So my question, Sumit, with just your permission, very quick one to Sagar. You know, when esports, when these gaming companies are backed by capital, you know, they would, of course, always expect monetization. So one of the ways is advertising revenue. Is that all? Is the content creator economy the second one? And is the marketplace the third one? And that's about...
I mean, these are the biggest three that you've rightly pointed out. But depending on platforms, there are various ways to monetize. Advertising is going to be a no-brainer to the entire ecosystem, right? Something like specific to Qlan, we're working on a subscription model where being present on a platform, but if you're a paid user, you get a special set of features that work primarily on two pillars, which is higher discoverability and more customization. So customization is something that is very privy to the gamers, where their profile looks a certain way, where their images can look a certain way. They have rights and access to a few digital assets that a non-paid user won't. But the actual practical side of it, of being probably a premium user, would be finding better job opportunities, matching with the right set of people, getting recommended to the right set of organizations that could probably find talent.
Subscription in India is loaded with friction. How do you address it?
I mean, see, if you deliver enough value, people will pay for it. We've seen it in a country like India itself. It's not that the subscription model as a whole has failed in India. It is working, it is surviving. Of course, the spending capacity is something that is questionable, but as a model, it hasn't failed. Indian user is very particular about calculating what are the returns that I get. So as a brand, all I can tell you is if you're building real value and you're firm on delivering that value, your audience will pay for it.
Yeah, and compare that. No, just one. And compare that to the 5 rupees betting platforms.
I won't get into RMG, not my expertise.
All right, we're going to close the session now. I would like to thank the panel for this very, very interesting and a vast topic of social gaming, because that's where the future of Indian gaming ecosystem lies. The more the social and responsibly social platforms and habits that we inculcate in the ecosystem, the more the beneficial for the entire economy as well as the player engagement as such. Thank you so much, panel.
Thank you, Sumit. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you so much. It was a very interesting panel, and I see a lot of energy towards the end of the show. Thanks a lot. We are closing for the day. Thank you for joining us at fourth digital conference at the India Gaming Show. Thanks a lot.